Hello, Meteorologist Hutch Johnson, and in this update, I'm going to take a very close look at some data from the storms that rumbled through on Friday and on Saturday. The deadly tornadoes, and did the derecho, which caused widespread wind damage across the state of North Dakota, Minnesota, and on into the UP. Did that derecho save the Fargo area, the southern metro, at least Kindred and Horace, from those tornadic thunderstorms that were so deadly in the Enderlin area? This update coming up right now.
Now, a Hutch's Weather Update with Chief Meteorologist Hutch Johnson, brought to you by Robert Gibb and Sons.
All right, it was a very fateful night on Friday night across the region. All of these icons you see here from the Storm Prediction Center as they tracked your severe weather reports and those of chasers. There were 17 tornado reports that night across portions of North Dakota. 235 wind reports, and 55 of them were from wind gusts that were over 65 miles per hour and over 110 miles per hour in some instances across portions of Minnesota and the Southern Valley. We did see hail reports and large hail reports that were very significant as well. Over 45 hail reports across the area for 295 reports. You can see the track of the storms starting in southeast Montana and marching all the way into the UP and even northern Michigan as we went into the wee hours of the morning on our Saturday. So we're going to take a look at a couple of things, and if you have a comment, question, ask me. But I do want to share with you just some of the facts of the storm system. This was a look at 7 in the evening. We had tornado warnings in Buffalo, South Dakota on Friday, and a line of storms forming. This is the storm line that would eventually create the derecho, and that is a long line of thunderstorms that stretched across our region from north to south that persisted all evening from 7 in the evening and before. The derecho event started as we went into parts of central North Dakota, passed through the valley, went all the way through northern Minnesota and into the UP, with wind damage the entire way and gusts in excess of 70, 80, 90, and even 100 miles per hour. Now, this is a view of the radar loop from that night. We'll go ahead and play this as it loads. And it gives us this overall picture of this, the derecho spinning. You can see the counterclockwise circulation of this windstorm. And then what's called the wake low on the backside of it right here. Those very gusty north winds buffeting Stutzman County, the Highway 200 corridor as we went into the late night hours, even after the main line of the derecho passed its way through. But one thing I want to draw your attention to is the very beginning of this video here as the storms move through the area. We did have a couple of cells that formed here across portions of Stutzman County and also down into the area of Lisbon and Fort Ransom. These were two tornadic thunderstorm cells that fired ahead of the line in the tornado watch area. So we had the windstorm on the backside called the derecho and the two tornadic cells that had long-lived rotation that was tracked by numbers of storm chasers. Let's examine that just a little bit closer as we take a look at that loop. And we're going to look at these two tornadic cells that work their way through. I'll go ahead and pause this and put it a little bit more of a slow motion ride here as we go through. So as we do take a peek at these storms, tornadoes that were first reported near Spiritwood, awful, damaging storms. There's the Hook Echo. Those moved into Barnes County, as you see here. The other storm was just getting started, just forming outside of Litchfield and the Marion area. Meanwhile, this storm produced tornadoes on the ground on the north side of the interstate. You can see the bite taken out of the storm. That's what we call a hook echo. And those oftentimes can form when tornadic thunderstorms develop. It does not always mean a tornado's on the ground, but in this case, indeed. Textbook examples of, two hook echo storms side by side. One marching eastbound along Interstate 94, along that corridor and toward Valley City. One just getting developed out here west of Fort Ransom. First signs of a tornado down near Fort Ransom was just to the west. This cell you'll see here cycles and the tornado skips to the south of the interstate here. So south of Valley City, both confirmed tornadoes touching ground. Then as we head towards Fort Ransom, the second storm on the south side produces a tornado in and around Fort Ransom, and then that is the one that worked its way right into the Enderlin area. Notice on the left side of the screen, that is the derecho approaching. These storms were marching east, pretty persistent tornado signatures. And behind my head, I'm going to duck out here. We'll show you Fargo on the right side of the screen, Horace, and those southern storms heading towards Leonard, Kindred, and Walcott. So these long-lived tornado-producing storms lasted from Stutsman County and are pushing into portions of western Cass County. And as they did so, this beast caught up with them. These storms were moving to the east at about 25 to 35 miles per hour. And the derecho that you see out to the west was moving at over 60 and 70 miles per hour. So the wind was going to go to the derecho. It was going to eventually catch up to the storms. And if you were with me during the storm coverage on that fateful Friday night and into Saturday morning, I was concerned about how these would interact as the derecho caught up to the tornadic supercell storms that were, well, consistently producing tornadoes confirmed on the ground. We'll see what happens in this. And I do believe there's a chance that the derecho may have spared the southern valley, including the southern metro area of Fargo, because this storm cell was moving in towards Horace, and also maybe portions of northern Richland County from these two tornadic cells. Let's examine the velocity data with this as we go through, and we'll start with a look right here. The velocity data, remember the greens and the reds showing side by side where we had the rotating storm. This was when the tornado moved south of the interstate and pushed its way into the Fingal area. Here was this one just getting started near Fort Ransom, and as it pushed into the Enderlin area. So from Fort Ransom to Enderlin and rural portions of Sheldon, this storm was heading in the general direction of Leonard. As the derecho approaches right here, you can see the winds from it interacting with the northern storm and shoving this one. It was scooping up in front of the other tornadic storm. So the derecho wipes out storm 1 from producing the tornado and catches up to storm 2 right here. Still see near Davenport. A late tornado report in Davenport was reported to the National Weather Service of touching down there before the derecho caught up to it and moved through the Fargo area. So I'm going to let this loop through, and I know it takes a bit of time, but you can see tornado 1 on the north side that started out near the Spiritwood area, continued to be in areas south of Valley City. And really what I want to point out here then with this system as it worked its way through is that the southern tornadic storm developed later. The northern one was interacting with it somewhat. This one started to race around the front side of the prior tornadic storm because sometimes these storms kick out outflow, that outflow boundary scooping in, causing this one to race northward potentially. But this is the leading edge of the derecho catching up with tornado 1 and eventually tornado 2. And you can clearly make out in this example here, and I do recall that night as the storm approached Horace, warning Horace that it would be a terrible event if it moved through, but we didn't know how this derecho, which was right here, it had already wiped through storm 1, tornado 1, and it was pushing onward toward tornado 2. And by the time we got to the timestamp on this, 11:38 p.m., I'll see if I can effort to put that up on your screen here, 11:38 p.m., that timestamp is right here. The derecho overtakes the second tornadic storm. There was your Davenport tornado, and boom, the derecho took hold and took over. Now, along the leading edge of the derecho, we could get those QLCS tornadoes, and those were still a risk as we move forward. But the two supercell tornado-producing storms, I believe, were wiped out. What say you? Are you a meteorologist, National Weather Service? I'll tell you what, it's an interesting discussion, to say the least, and I do believe pretty sincerely that that is indeed what happened here, and it may have spared. Nobody can tell if it would have been continuing to produce tornadoes as they worked their way off to the east. A little bit of a more broad view of the region here as this event unfolded. I'm going to back out of the way and just let the video play through another time. Here we go. The storm up near the Valley City area that you see the reds and the hole in the storm right here where my cursor is pointing, that was the tornado south. And then in the far south, near Fort Ransom, where the second tornadic storm produced the touchdown just near Fort Ransom, worked its way towards Enderlin. And boom, here comes the Derecho pushing its way, surging its way through Tornado 1, located here, and eventually Tornado 2, just before Davenport and Kindred and Horace, and possibly the South Metro area as well. So that has been an explanation of some interesting findings that I had come across during the event and taking time after the event to take a look. Let me know your thoughts. My prayers go out to the communities impacted by all of the storms, the terrible wind, the terrible damage, and particularly those who lost everything and lost their lives. Prayers to you. And I'll tell you what, hopefully we can learn more from what happened during this storm so we can better warn and alert people in the next event. Thanks so much for your trust in watching Hutch's Weather. Thanks for subscribing to my YouTube channel, Hutch's Weather. Thanks for following me on Hutch Johnson, Chief Meteorologist on Facebook. And you can always get the latest on your weather information anytime, anywhere on hutchesweather.com.